Welcome to this edition of the Million Dollar Mastermind podcast. This is where we pick the brains of high achievers from all walks of life and get their hard-earned, real-world insights on winning. I'm your host, Larry Weidel. And I've heard that it's going to be very, very useful in basically creating the raw material for you to, the stuff that, when we have to speak or we write a book or we do anything, you start accumulating your pile of information that you want to cover or sort through. And then when it comes time to actually do it, then you dig in and say, what do we have? Let's sort through it, make sense out of it. But AI seems to be able to help with that first stage. And probably do the first stage a whole lot better than you would yourself. But then you can put your twists on everything. You got the foundational stuff, but then you can put your twists on it, which really adds value and makes it a quality product. But it's going to be, seems like it's going to be bland. And the way I find most books on winning out there in the marketplace, like written by a sixth grader who just learned how to do something successfully. It's like, this is the answer. It's like somebody who's got a trading philosophy. It worked one time in the market. This is how you do it. Follow my trading principles. And then that cycle might not come again. Around for 17 more years, but you don't know that. You think it's always going to work that way. It's
I think I think that's in every industry. There's some guy out there who did something right once and probably did it wrong 10 times, who's written a book and they're celebrated as some hero. And I get everybody going, hey, Eric, why don't you write a book? You should write a book about this or write about that. I'm like, I'm too busy doing deals to write a book.
right.
If I slowed down and I didn't want to do deals anymore, I didn't want to help buyers, help sellers, then yeah, it makes sense for me to write a book. But, right now, why would I do that? I've got a full plate as it is.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head about why I wanted to do this is because I find that, listening and hearing things from high achievers are just priceless to people on the way up. However, it's hard to get the things you're telling. We talk about on these podcasts. Most of it has never really been discussed with the people with their own team, because you're busy doing stuff. They don't know how you think, how you evaluate. When you get into a situation, how you unravel it and find the key thing to go for. And the first question asked, you're busy doing it. We're on the attack. And so this is why these types of conversations can be so incredibly useful, because this kind of thinking gets addressed. And once you hear it, it's not rocket science. It just makes most of the stuff makes perfect sense once you hear it. It's like, duh. But, somehow I didn't think about that before, And so what's been the biggest, I'm going to get into these awards after this, but what's been the biggest help for you in terms of accelerating your development personally?
Well, I mean, it's kind of odd. I had when I was working with that Main Street firm, my broker used to tell a story about the certifications you can get in the industry. And he was telling me a story about a guy who, was sitting outside the door while another individual was in there, and he was listening to what he was telling, the board of directors. And he was telling them that, make sure that you get someone who's certified in this craft, because he saw the other guy outside the door who he knew wasn't certified. And he, because they asked him, what is the one question we should ask all the other brokers we interview? And he said, make sure that, they have a certified business intermediary certification. And so the guy left and the other guy walked in, and sure enough, the question came up and they asked him, what kind of certifications do you have? And he says, well, I have the JFDI. And they're like, what's that? And he's like, well, while all these other brokers were out getting their CBI, I was just out there just effing doing it. But that said, I still went and got all the certifications, and I do think they're valuable, and I do think they're a differentiator, which goes back to a lesson I learned in Ford Motor Company from a great mentor I had there. And he said, if you're looking at marketing yourself or a product or anything, you're one of three things. You're either cheaper, you're different, or you're better. And if you can, convert on two of those and convince your audience on that you're, on two of those, you're going to dominate the market. So no one wants to be cheaper. So you better be better and different, right?
Yeah,
so,
right.
That's always been a focus for me.
And so let's talk about one of the ways of differentiating and establishing your credentials is these awards. Tell us the stories of how you got going on that. And that seems like it's a significant part of your background and your life,
Well, a lot of it is just, being, a member of an association that gives out awards, right? So there's three I belong to. One is the Business Brokers of Florida, right? So that's our state association, which I mentioned earlier with over 900 brokers in the state of Florida. There's the International Business Brokers Association, which, is international in scope, but, it's probably about 3 times the size as our BBF group. And then there's Mergers and Acquisition Source, which is a lower middle market, group that I belong to too. So, having 3 memberships, and then selling a lot of businesses, tends to win you a lot of awards from all 3 of them.
Yeah. And so why would you, they don't just give the award to everybody in there, but that is an environment in which you can compete and win awards for performance, which is what you want to be doing anyway. And it keeps your competitive juices flowing. You can measure yourself against other people. And why did you get in the international thing? I mean, you sell internationally?
Yeah, IBBA. I don't sell internationally per se. It's mostly the greater 48 states, but IBBA, I would say probably 90% of its membership is North America. 10% is Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia. So it's still predominantly a U.S. based, organization, but they certainly invite everyone around the world to join. But there in 2021, that 32 million that I sold did get me second place.
Fantastic. Talk about selling 12 businesses in 2021. Did you have time to sleep?
Well, it's pretty normal deal volume for me is to do, 10 to 12 deals a year. So that, it just was kind of the perfect storm of a year when I got a lot of great inventory of larger deals. The largest deal I did, was a machine shop up in Pennsylvania. That one was, 15 million. So almost half of that 32 million total, and I did, several other, businesses kind of in that, $2 to $6 million range as well. And those were businesses such as, electrical contractors. I did a medical billing business. I did, even some small ones in there too that weren't very large. I think I did an $80,000 restaurant, that was a resale for a friend of mine. So, it kind of ran the gamut of a bunch of different, businesses, different sizes, but, I had a lot more, I'll call it lower middle market deals than I normally would get. I like to have, anywhere from 4 to 6 of those every year, and then balance the rest out with Main Street stuff that's local here in Florida.
What's the biggest learning experience that you've had from going through these deals recently, let's say, or that comes to mind, that that you wind up telling people about more than others? Because, when we started talking, you said, well, I can talk about stories all day long, but usually come from adventures you've had, things you've accomplished and stuff like that.
Well, I mentioned, people learn from failure. I have very, very few deals that once I get them under contract actually don't transact, but I did have one earlier this year that didn't, and it was a little bit of a lesson learned. And it was a dental practice, and the dentist created, a phenomenal business. And I had a buyer engaged right away. They made him a great offer. He liked the offer. And we started through the due diligence phase. And, I occasionally ask him, is everything going well? And he said, yeah, it's going fine, but it's going fine, not it's going fine.
Yeah.
I'm happy. There's just like a little hesitation in his voice, and I never pushed it hard enough.
Yeah.
I would say something like, you sure? Are you sure? And he'd say, yep, I'm okay. And we got about a week before the closing, and he said, I can't sell to these guys. And I asked him, well, wait a minute, we're a week away from closing. What's changed? And he said, well, they never brought their chief clinician in to meet me. I never got to talk to a dentist, a fellow dentist, about what their plans are for my practice and what their philosophy is versus mine. So I've talked to all these finance types, but never someone like me, and I'm just not comfortable with that. And I said, well, what if we bring someone in, tell them, here's an opportunity to correct it, bring them in and, see what they can do. And he's like, well, no, they kind of upset my landlord friend because they came in guns a-blazing and trying to tell him exactly what to do. So I don't feel comfortable there either. Well, by the time, I got through the entire conversation, there were 3, issues that I knew existed, but he would always say he was okay.
Yeah.
And the reality is he wasn't.
Right.
And I kind of had it in the back of my mind that, his eagerness to sell would overcome those things, but it didn't. Yeah. So that's probably the most recent lesson I've learned is that, trust your intuition. When you think there might be something wrong, dig into it and make sure you don't let that problem fester.
Most successful people are second guessed all the way through their lives. Have you run into that? In terms of trust, you're learning to trust your intuition, because that's refined over the years from failure as well as success. And you only got one thing to go on, and that is trust your instinct. You go into business for yourself, so you can be the one to make those decisions. They're not always right, but along the way, you get second glance. One thing is, I'm just glad I was not called out to be a politician, because every time, you can turn the biggest parent. You could take Mother Teresa, turn her into a demon. You know what I'm saying? That Mother Teresa, God. She was out there. Sure, she was dressed out like that, and make up all kind of bad things about anybody. And it just, I take it all personal myself, like they're attacking somebody I know they're really clean cut. They say, oh, sure, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, you just want to strangle them, but you can't, and you to be able to just shrug that off, I find very difficult a lot of the time, but not usually for me personally, but when they're attacking people around me that I know that, I want to protect, but that hurts. But there's no way to, I guess second guessing is a good thing. It keeps us on track and keeps us honest. What do you think?
Well, anytime something happens and you don't get the result or goal you want, going back through the process of what went wrong, and figuring out, okay, here's the lesson learned, here's the corrective and preventive actions I can take in the future to keep it from, reoccurring. is an important part of the process. So as a process engineer, again, that's a big part of, what I do. So, those check boxes, are now into my process, to make sure that, if it's a dental practice or something similar, a medical related practice, that chief clinician or that key person that, faces off with, the owner, is someone that they get to talk to and share philosophies with and bond before the transaction's complete.
Thanks for listening to the Million Dollar Mastermind. If you felt there were any valuable takeaways from this episode, please take a minute and leave us a 5-star review. Your feedback is important and really helps us get the word out to a wider audience. Remember, we have a valuable webinar that is absolutely free. Register for it right now at weidelonwinning.com. Thanks for listening.